Hey, hey Jeremy. I'm just getting on live right now. I'm just waiting for everyone to come in. And then I know Matt will probably be joining in a couple minutes. I'm excited. So today we're going to have Matt on. And he's going to be talking to us about, he's going to be telling us about himself, basically his personal development and how he deals with that as an introvert. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to get Matt on. I think he's here actually. I'm gonna ask him to go live if I know how to. Hey Juan. Hey Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
I'm so excited. Thanks so much for coming on. It's such an
Happy to
honor.
do it.
And I'm excited because I feel like there's a lot to learn from you. And I feel like that. I think learning your process on your personal development, and especially in the sense of being an introvert, because I know that's very different for extroverts. So I guess I wanted to start with definitions and seeing like your opinion of it. So the first definition of like the dictionary definition, one of them, there's two. So one is, that introverts are shy. So I wanted your opinion of that.
Yeah, so I think oftentimes introverts can be interpreted as being shy, but I think there's other definitions that would disagree with that. So for me, I think the reason oftentimes people and a person can be introverted and shy, and certainly there's probably even a high correlation there, but I don't think inherently if you're introverted you have to be shy or vice versa. And I think one of the reasons that people interpret being an introvert inherently as being shy because you may not have a lot to say. And what my personal experience has been, and what I believe the experience of a lot of introverts is that in fact, they're just, if they don't have anything to add to a conversation, they're not going to naturally participate by verbal communicating. They might just sit there quietly and think and take it in, or if they're disengaged with the topic, they're literally just completely unplugged and in their own headspace. And so I think that's the case with me. However, I think a lot of people that are growing up who are introverted get introduced as being shy, and I think that that label can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So there were certainly times in my life when I would have agreed with the label of being shy, but I think as I got to know myself and get more comfortable with myself, I really came to the conclusion that you know while I'm certainly introverted, I'm not inherently shy.
Totally. And I think it's like the same for me. Like, well, for me, I was very shy when I was young, but as I grew up, like things happen and the shyness starts going away. Was that the same with
Hmm.
you? Did you feel like you were shy when you were small, or you weren't shy at all even when you were young?
Like, I think, so I would say yes, I was, but I think it's because people labeled me as that, right? Like, Matt is shy. Matt,
Mhm.
my son is shy. The kid is
Yeah.
shy, right? And so because of that, I think inherently you just kind of take that on because that's probably an easier explanation than like, I just don't want to talk to you. So, and so people just inherently assume you're shy. So for me, being an introvert, what that really means is that if you're like, it means that you likely don't get energy from large groups or other people or social interactions, and you probably are more likely to recharge by yourself. And then beyond that, I think you're not the type to often make small talk, but when there's a subject matter you're passionate about, you're more than comfortable diving deep into it. So, like throughout even like my working career, I think a lot of people that I worked with would call me, they would just like call me shy, but like they were just misinterpreting the data and the patterns because like it wasn't like I was shy. If they wanted to talk to me about real estate or specifically about the work we were doing or anything that I personally found engaging, I'm more than happy to talk about it. But if you want to talk about the weather, the Blue Jays, or anything else that I personally don't value, I'm just going like I'll passively sit there and listen to you and like you can ramble on, but like I'm probably not going to participate in that conversation.
Yeah, makes sense. And actually, you brought on a good point because it was basically the other definition. So in psychology, they say a person's characterized by concern primarily with his or her own thoughts
Hmm.
and feelings. And another thing which I learned from a friend of mine that's a psychologist was exactly what you said. Introverts lose energy in social environments and extroverts gain energy in social environments. And same thing, like when I heard that, it rang so well. I was just like, okay. I mean, I already knew I was, but I was like, wow, that now I definitely know I am.
Yeah, 100%.
So then, okay, so then I wanted to talk to basically, so getting on with now that we understand the definitions of being an introvert, and then now going through your personal development and like how you saw yourself when you were young, and what were, I guess, the major things or milestones that you like, I guess, had to past to be able to get to the place that you are? Like, what were the big learning experiences for you?
Sure. And kind of specifically through the lens of being an introvert and maybe being
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I can give
so
you some examples if you want, or if you already know.
yeah, so certainly a couple come to mind. So I think one, like so much of society and social conditioning and just everything along that lines tells you regularly to behave and act within a certain script. And so I think just like for myself inherently, there were aspects of that script that didn't come natural because I just didn't see the point in it. And so you end up like going through the bare minimum motions, but like that actually makes you more awkward and more self-conscious than if you would actually just embrace whatever comes natural to you. Um, so with myself, when I was like in my very late teens, early 20s, like a lot of people, like used alcohol as a social lubricant and a crutch in large gatherings and stuff like that. Um, but with time, like, and now I don't even drink at all, but with time, I started to learn that, you know, that wasn't like I'd be better served to just not go to those interactions if that's the sort of like if I'm just like I'm just going to have to dull myself to the point where I can stand putting up with this large gathering and meaningless talk and like how is work and shit like that. Um, so one of the bridges I've used, or like one of the gap measures I've used to get to the other side of that is and Tim Ferriss talks about it, regular bathroom breaks at large gatherings. So like I love just going like to into a bathroom stall, I'll just sit there and just like legit, I'll usually just throw on my headphones and listen to a meditation app and just sit there quietly and with my thoughts just to kind of get myself back in the mood to continue interacting. So I found that to be an effective, I don't want to say coping mechanism, but just tool in my tool belt. Um, but even
Something to, I
more
guess,
so,
be energized, because like you said, being in a social environment was taking your energy away, so you're trying to isolate to regain that energy. Basically, it
yeah,
sounds like,
and
right?
just a reset because like again, yeah. And so the moment I heard Tim Ferriss talk about that, I was like, that's amazing. I'm just going to do it all the time. Um, and then an even bigger lesson that took me a long time to really learn and get comfortable with is like it's okay to walk away from a bad conversation. So like it's okay to just like exit stage left. And so I think for the longest time I'd force myself through the motions of a lot of social interactions that really weren't providing value to me, but I felt a sense of obligation because of it. And the person you're interacting with, they're not getting the best version of you. They're not getting a good interaction. You're not enjoying the process and just all that stuff. So for myself, I think those are two things that with time I learned to adapt to. So like now I'm just very comfortable like either changing the subject matter if I find it to be not engaging or just disengaging. and moving on. Again, like it's just really weird this thought that someone can hold you conversation captive just because they want to make noises at you. And it's like, no, go
Yeah,
make noises at someone else.
that's true. So let's say, for example, being a leader versus a follower, and as an introvert. So did you, for example, since young, you always felt like you wanted to be a leader, or is it, did you feel like at one point you were a follower and then you started like breaking out of that and like that you wanted to, because specifically with you, it's real estate and you're like the top YouTube in Canada. So I feel like you are a leader, you're here to teach us and we're here to follow, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that like I could look back and see patterns either way that either said like, yeah, I was always a leader or no, I was never a leader. Um, for myself, I think the key was when there was an engaging situation, I was happy to be a leader. So there's aspects of my life where like growing up, I had a very close-knit group of friends and like I maybe was like the pack leader of that little group or whatever. And then in high school starting all sorts of little businesses and things like that, and I'd often be the catalyst kind of dragging along a couple buddies towards doing that. And similarly in university, and then even like out of university, I'd be like I had a close group of friends that we got really engaged with the TV show The League, which was about a fantasy football league. Anyways, I was like, this is really cool. Like, it seems like a great social bonding uh, excuse. So I was like, let's start our own league. And so like I was really the catalyst for that and creating that culture and environment. And so now, you know, when it feels right, I'm happy to be a leader, but I'm not someone that inherently just wants to lead everyone all the time. So like, you know, with purpose, I'm more than happy to step into that role if I think it's going to provide a net benefit, but it's not something where I inherently have to always be the driving force.
Hmm. Yeah, of course. It would be on like the specific topics like that in real estate. You're so passionate about it, so you want to be
Hmm.
a leader in that area. So that makes sense. Do you have though any, were there any things that you felt like you learned or had to learn to get into that leadership role? Or was that something that came naturally to you because it was something that you were leading in something that you were interested in?
Yeah, there's certainly a learning curve to becoming an effective leader, and I'm still definitely on that curve. For myself, I think one of the struggles that a lot of introverts may have as being a leader is the need for consistent, regular communication with everyone. So, and not always necessarily just about directives or orders, but about feelings and just trying to make sure everyone's on the same wavelength. So, there's been a variety of things that I've used and that I've learned just through trial and error, as well as consuming different like books and podcasts and YouTube videos on the subject matter to try and help myself become a more effective leader. So, one thing that I never really thought about until regularly leading a team was the importance that everyone be on the same frequency during a meeting. So, a few different ways that like I've learned, and then my team has learned with me to help get people on the same wavelength is we play this game called Threads, and it's a game we learned at an improv class. And it's something like we've played at some of the council meetings and stuff like that. But in essence, it really just helps. It's a very light, playful game that also expresses the importance of communication and both sending a message as well as confirming receipt of the message. But then beyond that, we also, like with Zoom, it became impractical to implement that. And so then what we started doing was a random question generator. So at the start of each big meeting, I'm first going to go around the room and ask everyone a random question from a random question generator. So it might be like, you know, in grade school, what was your favorite class? Or like, what was your favorite grade? Or random shit, right? Like, what's the last funeral you went to? But what it really does is it breaks a lot of people, whatever mood they were coming into the meeting with, it really disrupts the momentum they had with that mood and hopefully gets everyone aligned. For me right now, like as a leader, the thing I'm studying constantly is culture. and how important culture is, and just all the different intricacies and aspects of that. So, been reading Ben Horowitz's What You Do Is Who You Are, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Laconi, and just, you know, The Black Jacobins, which was about the Haitian slave revolution, which was like the only successful slave revolution that resulted in a country being formed, and just like really diving deep into the aspects of these cultures and why do some cultures live on and survive and thrive, and why do others end up dying. And I think that for really large businesses, for impactful movements, for anyone that really wants to make a ripple in the sands of time, you need to be able to create a culture and you need to be capable of being a leader, because if you can't influence other people, no man is an island alone to himself. So if you're trying to really have a big impact, you have to have other people on your team and you have to be the driving force behind that. So it's been a really interesting journey, stepping into that leadership role, and it's something that I personally get a lot of personal satisfaction from.
Yeah, I can imagine. And what about for when you were talking about the frequency and you do the threads? So is that specifically to be able to see if you guys are in the same frequency? Is that like what you would use to analyze if they're going to be a part of your team?
Oh, so like essentially this would be already with existing team members. So every Monday we've got a company-wide call, before it used to be in person. And so threads would be a way for me just to see where everyone's energy was at already, as well as try and get everyone on the same wavelength, right? So like maybe you came into something where like maybe someone cut you off in traffic and you just got to the office now. And like you might still be stuck in that pattern loop of like, man, like that guy was such an asshole. I can't believe he cut me off, this, that, and the other. And if you were to go into this meeting just without any sort of buffer or kind of tuning mechanism, you might be more aggressive or ruder or just hurtful to other team members when that probably wasn't your intention, but just because you found yourself in this mood, you're probably just going to keep going until something else changes your trajectory. And so that's really what the game of threads or the random question generator is just a way to get everyone. So like threads was really great because you're kind of playful and you're making fun of each other when you stumble or mess up. And the random question generator is great just because whatever you kind of came into that meeting with, maybe a prerogative or you were like, I need to say this thing or do this. Again, it just kind of disrupts that thought pattern and hopefully gets everyone on a similar wavelength, because I don't want to have like one team member be having the best day while the other's having the worst day, and now we're trying to have an important meeting, because there's going to be some inherent conflict there, even though like likely neither of them have that intention. It's just going to result in it.
Oh, okay. So then to bring someone onto the team and then because I know because you want to make sure everyone meshes together and then how or even let's say for example like specifically I think is probably easier is like with you and Ben because you guys are two completely different people and when you decided to start working with Ben was that something like did you because like that because you are different personalities like did you do some kind of analysis or thinking of like if you wanted to do something with him and making sure that you meshed together? Were there some things that you kind of like paid attention to?
I'd like to say I had a formal process at that point in time, but I really didn't. So it was very haphazardly. These days, I try and be more intentional going forward. I think what with the specific relationship with Ben, the best way for both of us to make sure we were in alignment was to essentially look at each other's past actions and what we'd accomplished. And both of us had done a lot and clearly had shown a certain level of commitment to our work, and just any real project we decide was important that we took on, full heartedly. These days, though, I actually do have a much more formal process that I go through when it comes to looking at partnerships and stuff. And I think I've actually got it written out here on my flip chart. But I because I think it is actually way more important than a lot of people give it credit for in regards to making sure that you're in alignment with everyone, um, and that everyone's got the same, yeah. So, like specifically, this is for like real estate partnerships. That's maybe going to turn out backwards, but essentially, first you review your personal whys, and then the company's whys and goals, and then what we do, what we don't do, and then a big part here is also the PI test review and team discussion. So, for example, if I'm now looking at starting a new partnership, the way I'd go about approaching it is I'd ask that partner to do a PI test so that I could have a basic understanding of their personality. I'd have a 1 day offsite. So we'd already have discussed seriously the concept of getting into business together. But then what we would do is like book an Airbnb, go there for 1 day and literally just spend the entire day on neutral territory and go through those 11 exercises that I laid out on that list. And a big part of that is, doing Dean Graziosi's 7 levels deep exercise that he got from Joe Stump, as well as reviewing each other's PI test and presenting to each other the importance of the PI test and what you need to know in order to work effectively with that individual. So, for example, myself on my PI test, my E, which really looks at like your engagement or connection to the work, was off the charts to the right. And so, what that meant is that in essence, like I won't do anything unless I understand how it's impactful. So like the person like Judge Graham, when he was originally explaining to me, he was like, "Oh, your Mother Teresa," and what he really meant by that was just like, if I don't have a direct connection to the work and I don't believe it moves the needle, like I just won't do anything. And so it's really important that a business partner understand that about me because if you want to get the best out of me, you're going to need to be able to explain why you're asking me to do something important. If you're trying to ask me to do a simple task and I don't see the relevance behind it, I just won't do it. So, like, a great example would be, you know, I wore a pair of jeans for a month straight and nothing bad happened. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to always wear the same pair of jeans now because it literally doesn't matter. It's not, I didn't go bankrupt because of it. They didn't throw me in jail because of it. I did nothing dramatically changed about my health. So it turns out there's no negative consequences here. So because I naturally notice that pattern loop, then I'm just comfortable proceeding with that. So if someone was to try and change my behavior, they would have to really explain why it was important. I'm not just going to do it just because that's what everyone else does. And so those sort of open discussions at a neutral location, I think is really important at the formation of a business partnership because one, you're starting off on the right footing, right? The right foundation because you're being very open, very transparent. Like, hey, I'm not super high attention to details. I'm good enough with details, but like, it's not a passion of mine. I'm not going to seek out and ensure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted because I don't believe it actually moves the needle. So because it doesn't move the needle, it's going to be very difficult for me to personally buy into it. One other thought in general towards partners and just even the people you have around you in your network. Steve Sims in his book Blue Fishing talks about he doesn't hire anyone if he wouldn't chug a beer with them. And now I don't think it's actually important that you chug a beer with them, but it's that concept of would like are you naturally comfortable around them? Are you at ease or are you always at you know are you tense, right? Is there a certain tension in the air where you guys are always confrontational towards each other rather than comfortable? And an example Steve uses in that book is his accountant. Him and his wife were talking one night, and like their accountant was really good, probably at his job, but they were like, "Would you chug a beer with him?" And the wife was like, "No." And there's a certain aspect there that if you're not that comfortable with that individual, that you might not be really open to them, and so you might hold back important information that might actually really help the business succeed. And so if you can't have that level of transparency and comfort with your business partners, I think inherently there's an expiration date on that business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that's so true. I wanted to also just um, bring it back a little bit, back to because I mean the information is good, but I wanted to get back to you
Hmm.
and specifically if you had any, any anecdote about yourself, about something pivotal that happened or you learned that helped you move forward in your life to get into the stages that you did?
Sure. Um, so like this is a pretty open question, so I could take this a lot of different ways. So I'll try and
As
tie it
an
into
introvert,
being
or like as this personal development, I mean, in personal development, like were there any key things where you didn't, like you said, like you didn't know, or you didn't have that skill, and some specific something happened in your life that like shifted that and either made you start learning it or made you just click and I was like, oh, I just need to do this, um, you know, to
hmm
improve my lifestyle or get into, real estate or,
Sure.
starting your
Yeah.
YouTube,
So
whatever.
one thing that stands out for me, um, this was in 2016. I was working still at my full-time day job, which was at a publicly traded pharmaceutical company, and we had gone through a series of acquisitions and mergers, and we had recently just been acquired. And I was working here in our London, Ontario office, and to me, it appeared like the writing was on the wall that they were going to close our London office and just shut it down, and there'd be no job transfers or anything like that. And I there was in essence, like when your company gets acquired, usually they're looking for synergies, right? Or what's the other word? The other catchphrase. But anyways, they're looking for cost savings, right? It's all about the uh, the effectiveness of scaling. And so they had brought in a bunch of consultants from New Jersey to essentially, like the way it works in real life, they've got a bunch of fancy names for it, but they're there to learn your job so that they can get rid of you as fast as possible, right? But originally, it's just about helping you. It's framed as helping you and helping the company better understand everyone's positions. And
And their
so
processes.
yeah, exactly. And then so, these consultants were pretty confrontational. I'd mentally already checked out of work because I could see that we were going to close down and stuff. And there was one day where the consultant came into my office and just like blew up on me. And um my like he was so loud and aggressive that my boss came into my office to see what was up, and essentially then the door got closed. There was still just a bunch of aggressiveness and yelling, and I was just kind of sitting there. I was just like, the fuck am I doing with my life? Like, this guy's just the biggest asshole in the world. Like, this working for a company that doesn't care about me. We're in pharmaceuticals. We don't care about our customers. Like, why am I doing any of this? And it it was a Wednesday, and like the previous, well, including that day, the previous 3 days, this consultant had also made a staff member of mine cry every single day. And like no one was standing up for her or any of the other employees because everyone's secretly hoping that they're still going to be able to keep their job, right? And I finally, like after that, I went in like that night, went into my boss's office and was just like, "Hey, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice as a courtesy, but like if that guy ever does that again, like I'm just out. I won't give any passwords. Like you guys can just go fuck yourselves." And then I wrote a really long email to our new HR department, just kind of citing the hostile work environments, giving witnesses and things of that nature, and sent off that email and got that consultant banned from our London campus, and he had to fly back to New Jersey the next day to explain what the hell was going on. And I can remember someone pulling me aside, and another VP in our company, and him just being like, "Hey, Matt, like, you know, you're a young guy, and you've been doing pretty good here at the company. You'll be able to land somewhere else and get a really good position based upon the history and what we did with this company and stuff, and Like, I hate to see you throw away your career. Like, you can't quit without knowing where you're going to land next. And that email you sent was kind of aggressive, and like that's going to hurt because you're not going to get good references." And I just like, "Oh, you don't understand." I was like, "I'm done. Like, I'm retired." And it just didn't compute with him. And then the next day, we were in a conference room with like all the VPs, and like this one guy who was 55 years old just like broke down crying about how he's not going to be able to get a similar type job with the similar income, and like how is he going to support his family and all this stuff. And I just realized like what a how conditioned a lot of individuals had become to just like to being willing to trade free choice for kind of being absolved of any of the consequences of it. And that individual that was like really upset about the potential of losing his job, 2 weeks later, once I was no longer working there, I was actually like flipping a property literally walking distance from our old office because I would go out for walks, door knocking on my lunch break and shit, right? And he came to check it out. He was like, "Man, this is so amazing! Like, I'm going to do this, da da da." And I just kind of realized he never did. And I kind of realized that a lot of us think we want free choice, but most people don't. And it is actually pretty exceptional to be willing to take that step. But I think the first step is the hardest step, and after that, each subsequent step becomes easier and easier. And I really gained confidence around that time because like I had all these 55-year-old VPs that technically were like among the best in their position in our city for what they did. And like none of it mattered and none of them were in control of their lives and they were all victim to whatever was going to happen to our business and just, whatever happened next. And for myself then I was just like, man, like I would rather be dirt poor and in control than be rich and a victim to um someone else's like story, narrative, decisions. And it was just really empowering. And since then, essentially, I've been extremely comfortable giving myself permission to step outside of normal because I literally do believe that like normal is for normal people. And I don't necessarily want to be normal. And that's not a value judgment on those that do. But I definitely know that what I want from myself and for my legacy is not to read normal.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. And I totally agree. Sometimes, um, like that, sometimes well, at the beginning, I say, I used to find it shocking when, you think like people, like you said, people want freedom. And then, but when it comes to them to doing the work, they're like, I rather not for some reason. Like they don't think about it that they're losing their freedom. And yeah, so I find it shocking that they rather take the easy way and not have their freedom and then just be told what to do because it's easier that way.
Hmm.
But at the same time, that's like you said, it's the majority. And
Yeah,
then so you made a
absolutely.
comment about your confidence. Um, do you have any stories about yourself or um, like another different story about, something that made you increase your confidence or gain your confidence?
Um, Yeah, like there's definitely a variety of things I could think of. One that maybe stands out for me is in 2018, Jeff Weibel and myself attended Rain's Acre event, which is a 2 or 3 day real estate conference, and we attended it in March of 2018, and we're like, man, this is really great. This is cool, and we're kind of chatting about it. And I just kind of like looked at Jeff, and I was like that was literally the best conference I've ever been to. But I'm still pretty sure we could do better. And so we just decided that we were going to host OREC, the Ontario Real Estate Conference. We gave ourselves a 75-day deadline and then just did it. And so I definitely remember standing on that stage and not being nervous at all, like just being like this is my stage. Like I own this. I put this all together. And just realizing that no one was ever going to give me permission to do that. So like it's not like no everyone goes through life like TV and movies have really conditioned us wrong. Like everyone thinks that they're this caterpillar and someone's going to spot them and give them permission to turn into a butterfly, right? Because like you think about the TV shows where it's like, or like the movies, right? The girl takes off the glasses and all of a sudden she's hot and it's like, she's cool and like all this shit. And we're always thinking that someone else is going to reach down and pull us up or give us permission, but you need to really understand that like everyone else is just stuck in their own head the same way you're stuck in your own head. And none of them are really like no one's thinking about me. Like and I'd like to think that I make a greater impression than most, and yet no one's actually really thinking about me. And one thing that I've came to learn with time is also because no one's thinking about you, it means that like no one sets out to do wrong by you on purpose. So no one woke up today deciding like they were going to screw over Matt McKeever. It just doesn't happen. I'm not important enough. But at the same time, it also means I'm not important enough that anyone's going to reach down and notice that I'm special and give me permission to become the fullest and best version of myself. You literally just need to give yourself permission. And so had Jeff and I not given ourselves permission to just be like, well, let's just put this together in 75 days and see what happens, like it would have never happened. There would be no such thing as OREC. And the next year wouldn't have happened. And all the other things that we built upon related to that would have never happened either. And so I just think it's really important that people understand that you're in the, like, you have to be in the driver's seat. And again, if you think that life is happening to you, like you're right, but that's only because that's the reality that you're choosing to live in. If you see it as you're happening to life, like as in you're in the driver's seat, that's also the reality you're going to live in. And I think it's really important that you live in a reality where you're not seeking confirmation or permission from anyone else, but you're really the one choosing it. And I think that that's just really important. And I think almost with anything in life, you need to find a way where you're in the position of a strong locus of control, right? Like where you're in the driver's seat. And so even when things go wrong, I really like trying to take ownership of it because if I don't, it means that like there was nothing I could do. And that's literally just the way it had to be. And that to me is actually scary versus like if I screwed up, that means I could always fix it. And so, when an employee lets me down, when someone destroys a property of mine or something crazy, again, I'm going to try and find a way where I'm at least in part culpable or responsible for it because again that means I can now take action to remedy the situation where if it happened and it's completely outside of my control, well now it's a force of nature and I can't control nature, and that's actually really scary to me to think that I can't be in control. So again, I just think it's so critical that you give yourself permission and understand that the people in your life, they'll have good intentions, but they're going to have a natural risk aversion and bias towards being conservative. And because of that conservative bias, they're going to naturally not want to see you get hurt. And there's good intentions behind that, but the actual results are quite bad. And it's really important that we avoid falling victim to other people's risk aversion. If you have that risk aversion and like it doesn't fit you, then that's cool. But if it doesn't fit your parents or your grandparents, that has nothing to do with you. And you need to be willing and comfortable to step outside of that and grant yourself permission. And what's interesting is once you start granting yourself permission, magically other people are going to start giving you permission as well. But until you give yourself permission, no one else is. So like you do one OREC and people are like, man, you got to do that next year. And like, you got to do this and that. And like, it's got to be this. And like, anything I can do to help, like, I'd love to help. And all of a sudden now you've got an army of volunteers. But where were all of them when like you were just deciding to get started? Nowhere, because again, they're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about giving you permission to go succeed. So it's literally not until you succeed that people are going to start giving you permission to succeed. But when that does happen, then that can really provide you with some great momentum and an even stronger driving force to move forward.
Totally. That's so true. Like even in my life of things that like what you just said is very, very true. It's you definitely do have to give yourself permission. That's like an amazing tip. So
Hmm.
what about, let's say, a a skill that you didn't have when you were younger that you realized it was important for your development to go forward? Is there any kind
So
of
yeah,
skill that you didn't have or lacked in, maybe had but lacked in?
absolutely. So one skill that I noticed naturally, and maybe this ties back to being introverted or shy, but because I had that label of shy growing up, I naturally kept telling myself that. So it's very easy. And you're just like, well, I'm going to be the quiet guy. I don't like talking to people, all these things. And in my third year at university, I kind of recognized that there was value in being persuasive and being able to connect with people and just being more comfortable in your own skin. So I took on a completely commission sales door to door job, trying to sell like air purification systems. Um, did it for like a month, quit, didn't make a single dollar from it, but none of that matters. The experience of just having to go door to door for an extended period of time really got me comfortable because usually what we fear is the unknown. It's not the actual thing. So like if
Mhm.
if you've never played paintball, you're scared of getting hit. But once you've been hit, you're not even if it hurt, you're not going to be as scared the second time. And like it's just that true fear of the unknown where our imagination can run wild. So once I started like knocking on strangers' doors and having to like sit down with them for 20 minutes and talk about an air purification system I didn't care about, that really drove me to develop a new skill set. But even more so, it's not like I became a great salesman overnight. More so, what it just happened was I broke out of that narrative that I'd been given for such an extended period of time. And so then at other aspects of my life, I would feel comfortable stepping out when I saw it important. So an example that stands out for me where then I applied that lesson was I was at a training event when I was going through to get my CPA chartered accountant license, and like just a group of 100, 150 CPA students, right? So like not necessarily the most rambunctious or most personal people naturally, and you know the stereotype of accountants probably applied to that group. And there was this like uh what was it like a rock band karaoke thing or something, and they're like, oh, we're going to like force you guys into teams and you're going to have to do this shit. I can just remember like sitting at my table and I literally just looked around the table and I was like, man, there's no one that's going to like be a driver here to make something happen. So I was like, hey guys, I see this going one of two ways. We can either be like get up there and be awkward like everyone else and just like get it over with and it'll take 3 minutes, or we can go up there and like really try and win and just give it our all and it's still going to take 3 minutes. I was like, I literally don't care, but like, what do we want to do? And the table decided and they were like, yeah, like let's go for it. I was like, okay, like we're going to do Bohemian Rhapsody, we're going to do this thing, and like we're going to really get into it, da da da. And so what was funny, it was like a two-part competition, so you literally got to do it twice. And so the first time, everyone that went up there was like awkward as fuck, and they were not into it, and like it was just like a lame experience for everyone. And then our team got up maybe halfway through, we gave it our all, and then every team after us like stepped it up. But then when the second round came around and everyone does it again, all the teams that came before us did such a better job the second time than they did the first time. And the reason was, again, they were just looking for permission to be goofy and weird and awkward. And like, I'm not going to claim that we were the best at what we did. It was just that we went into it and gave ourselves permission to just like do it, right?
Mhm.
And um, again, there's different aspects in my life where every now and then I'm like, man, I'm not really feeling this. And then I just like try and like take a step back and be like, well, like, do you want to just go through the motions and get this over with? Or do you want to like crush it? Because it's probably going to take the same amount of time either way. And so when I'm my better myself, I'll give myself permission to lean into and do it. When I'm a lesser version of myself, I'll just be a little bitch and cop out.
Good to know. But really good examples. I really love the stories. And I guess I have one more question for you. And that question is actually looking forward now into your life. And specifically, if you've thought about this, like if you've thought of, having a family, like has that come into your mind? And with your business and building a family, like have you thought of what you think that would be like, or like how you would put it together? Because everyone always says just even, having a partner is like a mission and a half, and then you're trying to juggle your life with like another person and then, also having kids. Like, has that ever, like, have you ever thought about that? Do you have like some kind of idea of it and how, you would go forward with them?
Yeah, so my thoughts are long and probably quite controversial on that subject matter. So I don't know if we've really got the time to dive deep into it here, but for myself personally, I view myself as whole without anything else. So I think to me, it's extremely important that you be in control. And the only way I can be, like, I can only control myself at the end of the day. So I don't expect my locus of control to expand beyond that. And I think a lot of people are slaves to genetic programming. And so I'd rather be a slave to my thoughts.
And so, in that sense, you're saying that you currently, right now, then have no interest in having a partner or even going forward with having kids, right? That's what you're basically getting at. Like, or are you just saying that even if you do decide to have a partner, you want to make sure there's that kind of independence between the two of you guys, the two of you, yeah, that you can be together and apart? Or is that what you're trying to get at? Or is it just that you just
Uh,
have no interest in a relationship?
yeah. So again, I think it would take days for me to properly explain my complete thesis on the subject matter. If I had to summarize it in an elevator pitch, I would simply say that I'm completely happy doing me, and I expect it's a rare individual that would want to operate in parallel with that.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's really
No
nice
problem.
to get to know you and hear all your stories, and I'm pretty sure that everyone got some really good information. I know I did. And yeah, I just really want to thank you so much for doing this. And hopefully in the future we can do another Instagram live on a different topic.
Awesome. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye guys. Bye everyone. Thanks for joining. I don't know how to end this. Okay.